Okay, good day everyone, and I welcome you all to another class section. Please, guys, let me say this. Please, please consult. At this level of your study, you need to consult not just your supervisor, the lecturer for the module. You should be able to consult widely when you are doing your research. Consult, get knowledge, get ideas from different places to enrich what you are doing. So today we are going to see a very important section of our class. Remember last time we saw on the part of initializing research proposal. And now, after which you have initialized a research proposal, you have gotten the basics. You have established your topic. You have established your research um, objective and so on and so forth. And also, I made mention within that initialization that within the initialization phase, it's more or less where you have the completeness of your research, because you're not only talking about the idea, the framing of the drafting of the topic. You also go through the phase of choosing the method to use, and all that. So now we're in that very part whereby you have made your choice. You have choose a different a specific methodology. Now, it is also very important for you to expand on that very methodology which you have chosen. So we're going to look at it more in more detail, and then please feel free to call me back to ask your questions. So now let's start. Now, research methodology is a critical area of research, right? And in our introduction, it says that the research methodology provides the critical procedures, processes, approach, the component that that allows you to run that very research, to carry out that very research, right? Now, within that process, there is also a very important aspect where you need to understand. And that very aspect is what? The aspect of you understand that this is a process. And being is a process that has some component. It is a methodological and systematic process framework that guides. Now, what this simply means is this, that as a process, it's like a laid down rule. It's like a laid down approach that you don't need to change it. What you need to do is just for you to adapt what is already there, and then you run with it. So now, at the level of your research methodology, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. What you're simply going to do is to apply the system that is already in place. Apply that very system and run with it. You don't need to change. You don't need to um, do anything that is new. You are simply going to accept what is in there and then fine tune it, customize it to fit into what you are doing, into your research. And that is your research methodology, what it's all about. And now, being a methodological and a systematic approach, it also assists you to understand all those processes, all those procedures and components of your research methodology, which in this case right now, in order for you to carry out research methodology, there are different layouts you can adapt. But for the purpose of this teaching, we're going to look at Sanders and et al. Okay, to look at how they presented research methodology. When you look at Creswell, Oates, and all these people, they all have a standard way that they have structured um, research methodology. We're going to follow the standards approach. Okay, in order for us to go on with this presentation, this very aspect of our learning. Now, and in that approach, we're going to look at the philosophical background, research approach, research strategy, theoretical choice, time horizon, techniques and procedures, and then the base upon which all these things are built is on the part of what? WWH of your research methodology. That is a concept which I came up with. In order for you to be able to write a research methodology, you don't do anything away from these three key words, which are what, why, and how. This concept is what I've applied, it's what I've seen when you apply it in any research. It closes down every confusion, every doubt in whatever you are writing. Now, let's understand this. Now, as a systematic approach, it is critical component. The criticalness of your research methodology is that it is that very process that allowed you, that assists you, that helps you, that informs you, that guides you throughout the process of your research. It's not something that you just pick and drop. As soon as you apply the right research methodology, you end up getting the right result and then achieving your research objective. Okay, and that is very, very important. That you should understand that what your research methodology is not something that you pick by chance or by convenience, but it's a thought process, and that thought process guides you in your systematic process, right? In our first class, we saw that research is something that we do every day. When you wake up in the morning, you want to know the weather for the day, you are simply doing research. But because you are doing academic research, which is what has a process, and that process is being guided by what? Research methodology. So it provides a systematic framework or structure for conducting, analyzing, collecting, analyzing, interpreting, and discussing your research. So now, when you start a research, right, with a wonderful idea, and that idea must run, that idea must be executed, and that execution process, what enables you to make that execution is a research methodology. So because it's a structure, right, like I made mention before, that you don't need to change it, you just have to adapt it and then customize it to suit in to what you are doing. Sometimes you see students, you see people trying to reinvent the wheel of a research methodology. No, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. What you're going to do is to follow that process. In your case right now, I want you from the beginning to, in your research methodology, be able to get um a structure you're going to follow. For example, a researcher's approach you're going to follow, or structure, right? In this case, we're following research onion, right, which have laid out all the processes that you must that covers research methodology. You look at any other one that you want to and then stick to that. What that we do for you is this, that someone that wants to some sometimes research methodology can be confusing. You don't know what comes after, you don't know what to bring and what not to bring. But if you follow a given researcher's approach, it will enable you, let's say research onion, it will enable you to do what? To be on track, what you need to cover in that your research, okay, in carrying out your research, which we assist you to collect the data you need to collect, analyze, do the necessary analysis, interpret that, and then be able to do your discussions. Okay, so it encompasses the what? The approach and the systematic, the techniques employed by the researcher to do what? To address the research questions. Now, there is no difference between, you cannot have your research question and now you want to achieve that very research question without having the necessary tool, which is now your research methodology. So as a researcher, your research methodology assists you to give you the tools, the techniques through which you can be able to answer those research questions in order for you to achieve your research objective, and then be able to draw the necessary conclusion and making the necessary contribution and recommendation to the stakeholders. So it involves the approaches or the techniques such as your quantitative, the qualitative, or your mixer method. And that is what the overview of what research methodology is all about. It has a process, and that process assist you to collect the necessary data, analyze it, and interpret it, and discuss it, which assists you to be able to answer your research questions invariably and indirectly, achieving your research objectives, which automatically leads you to answer to do what? To drawing conclusion and then making recommendations. So you can see that every one of them are interlinked. Your problem, your topic, your problem statement, your objective, your research methodology, they are all interlinked. And that's why I say that your research methodology is like that very base upon which your research is carried out, upon which you achieve your research purpose, through which what? A systematic process. You don't need to reinvent that very way. Bear that in mind. Okay. So as we have established that we are following standards and ETA process, right? Which is a research onion in this case. The first thing you see when you're using standards is that it has a research philosophy. And what is a research philosophy, right? The philosophical background, which is what? It is a philosophy or a paradigm of a research that compasses what? The underlying belief and the assumptions that shapes the research perspective and approach to knowledge what? Creation. It is that very belief upon which you are able to stand and then be able to do what? To establish the to shape the thinking, your thinking as a researcher. For example, when you are doing a study, right, within a cultural background, bear in mind that that very cultural background of the people will have an influence on how they will respond to what you are doing. So in this case right now, that is a belief, right? You're trying to look at the people's belief system, people's social construct, people's traditions, people's social well-being, and so many other things. Now, you need to understand that what this kind of study you are trying to conduct have this underpinning assumption that follows it. For example, again, you want to look at how AI today affect the performance of students. Automatically, there is what are you trying to understand? You're trying to see people's opinion, which involves around what they believe, what they have experienced, how they have experienced it, and so many other things. In that case right now, there is what? A philosophical belief system that guides what the kind of study, the kind of data you are going to do what? Collect towards you, informing that knowledge, making that knowledge available, making that knowledge to answer to the what? To the question which you have thrown to them, that will enable you to create a different knowledge, or add a knowledge to existing knowledge. So in this case right now, in order for you to be able to apply philosophical paradigm of your research, right? There are a number of research philosophy or paradigms that is out there which you can always consider. And one of them is what? Ontology, which refers to the assumption about the nature of reality. Meaning what? That what? The nature of reality of the people. So now, when you want to do a study that wants to understand the nature of reality of your participant, meaning what? That the philosophical grounding, the philosophical aspect of that research will be what? Ontological, right? Which in this case right now, how the researchers perceive the study object of the research in business and in management, shaping their worldview and the researcher's focus. So now, as a researcher, when you are trying to understand people's um, nature of reality, right? Whether in business or whatever, understand that what you are simply going to look at the research from the ontological viewpoint. What about epistemology, which also involves knowledge acquisition, and then be able to validate, which means what that influencing the type of knowledge produced in the research and the method used to generate that very knowledge. So when you're trying to look at the kind of knowledge that embed within the people, your participants, right? What you're simply going to do is look at the ontological aspect of their thinking, that this thing right now is going to work within the epistemological aspect of their destiny. What about in the case of what? A paradigm. Sorry. In the case of what? Pragmatism, which all about trying to find a real life solution to a given problem, provide a practical outcome in solving a practical solution. Now, you want your research to be able to solve a real life situation. In that case, what kind of philosophical that will underpin your study? That can be what? Pragmatic kind of research, because you want to determine what? To get the cause, the consequence, and then be able to provide an actionable solution. So in this case, you're talking about what? The belief, and then the action, which is what? The reality, and then provide what? The action, which is what? The solution to that given problem. Cosmology looks at what? The role of value and ethics. Now, your study wants to look at the value proposition, the value perspective of your researchers. Now, in this case, I'm talking about what is norm, what is standard to them. You're going to look at what? This paradigm, this philosophy. What about objectivism and subjectivism, which represent two opposing philosophy, right? That instance of what in a research with objectivism emphasizing what the external reality. Now you're looking at what? The external reality versus what? The internal what? Individuals internalize reality. Now, how does what people feel, what happens in their society, have and versus what they can feel as a person? Because you cannot different you cannot separate one from his or her society, right? That with the influence you have in society, the society have influence on you, can also can define the kind of influence which you're gonna throw back to the society. So now the external reality versus what? The personal perspective on how the person will be able to interpret his or her reality. So, and that is what the paradigm, the philosophy will do for you. What about your positivism paradigm philosophy? It assumes that knowledge or experience is subjective, which can be measured through what? Empirical process. That people's reality is done on what is in the external. And that is it. So now, you as a researcher, you as a person, you're making a choice. You have to make a choice between understanding the kind of the reality that exists where the study wants to be conducted. So you're looking at when people reality is defined by the external influence, the society. And for you to be able to get this external influence, you need to be able to do what? Measure it. You cannot make a general statement. Your statement is based on what? What is already measured. So now you're going to provide a finding that is based on what? People's feeling, people's reality in their workplace. You want to know the impact of generative AI on student performance, right? Now, that performance is external to the students. Their learning environment is external to their own personal uh, 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 perspective. Now, and for you to be able to understand this impact, you don't need to say, okay, that generative AI have a positive impact on the student without you measuring it. Generative AI is external in their environment, and now for you to be able to know if this tool actually contribute, have a negative or positive impact, is you can make a blanket statement. Your statement, your findings should be informed by your sentence, sorry, will be informed by what you have found from the people. And that is what your positive research. And then interpretivism is all about what? The social reality have a subjective, meaning what? That individual interpret what happened around them based on how they feel it, based on their own what? Um, um, real experience, and so on and so forth. So now, under your critical realism, it involves two words, two parts. Sorry, what is real and what is observable. In your real world is independent of humans what perception, while your observable world is what is formed by what people's own experience and everything. And that is these are all different kinds of your research philosophy that you can play with when you are making a choice of understanding the belief and the norm of what of the people that we involve in your research. So now, because you want to establish this philosophy, which automatically influences the choices you make as a researcher, based on what you are trying to find out, and then you look at what you are trying to find out versus what the reality is in the field, and that will inform you to make a choice of the kind of paradigm to underpin your study. You cannot be doing something that is let's say cultural related, and then using something that cannot be able to fall within that kind of um uh environment, it may not really, it's not gonna fly. But when you're able to apply the right philosophy based on what you are trying to find in the study, then automatically it's going to make you to excel in that very topic of yours. Okay, so now when we take it a little bit further, we are looking at what? Remember, we have another aspect of your research onion, which has to do with theory, with research approach. In this case, right now, we're talking about a theory development approach. We have three kinds of research approach. We have a deductive, inductive, and abductive, or induction, deduction, and abduction. Now, under your deductive, guys, any question? Any question, guys?
No questions yet.
Okay. So now, okay. So under our research approach, what we are simply trying to understand is in three parts. The first one, deduction, which focus on where you as a researcher start with a theory or hypothesis, and then you're able to collect data to test or to confirm or refute the theory or your hypothesis. And this is commonly associated with quantitative research. Now, example of it is this: when you as a researcher have able to have a topic, right? And then you have already formed a theory that will guide that very topic. What you are going to do is to take that very theory into the field and then test it. If what you have come up will really solve that very, to answer those questions, right? In this case right now, your theory can be confirmed or can be rejected. Okay, and that is what deductive, which is what deduction. Now, on the level of your inductive, which involve collection and analysis and the analyzing of data to develop a theory. Before I go into this place, now before I go into induction, let me also give another example of deduction. Now, in your deductive research, you come up with a conceptual framework. Now, you go and test that very those remember a conceptual framework which have components. There are components which you want to test. And now you take that very component, you build your question, you build your hypothesis around those components. You go and test it. Now, during your testing, you collect data, guys, and then analyze those very data. And now, in your in your analysis, some of those components may be rejected and others been accepted. And that will enable you to do what? To form the final framework. Based on what? That based on this is the actual framework that you believe we answer, we address whatever you want to address. Under your inductive research, what you are simply going to do is to collect data, analyze those data, and through that very data you have collected, you do what? You build your theories based on the movement, the pattern of your data. And this can be done using your qualitative, your grand theories, and that is it. Under your abductive research, it's less but valuable approach where researchers generate theory or explanation based on observation and then seek evidence to support or refine those initial ideas which contribute to theory development and exploration and research. So meaning what? This abductive research is more or less a combination of what? The deductive and inductive, where you build, you, you formulate, and then you can test. Any question, guys? Okay, now when you are writing your proposal, you have been able to identify among multiples of philosophies and then establish yourself in a given one. You have done your research approach. Now, in the phase of your research choices, this is the foundation that influence your research approach. In this case right now, we have our quantitative, our qualitative, quantitative, and mix, which determine the method and the technique deployed to gather and analyze your data. Now, it's very important. I talked about this in our previous class. However, in a quantitative data, what are you trying to do? You want to collect what? Numerical data, which is what? To quantify, establish a relationship, pattern, or a trend, right? Now, under your quantitative, which also aims to test hypothesis, being used to identify correlation, a relationship between variables that will enable you to make a generalizable conclusion based on your statistical analysis. But the center point of your quantitative analysis data that you are collecting numerical data. Under your, which in this case right now, you can use your questionnaires and all that to gather your what? Your data, which can also be used, which is mostly effective in a large number of participants. You're looking at hundreds of participants. You look at what? Quantitative. You're looking at numbers, big numbers. That is what you apply your quantitative method. Under your qualitative, which focus on exploring and understanding complex phenomena through in-depth observation, examination. And in this case right now, the numbers will not be sufficient to establish what? This deeper understanding. Because, and it's what? Non-numerical data, which It can be pictures, it can be videos, it can be interview, observation, and so many other things. Now, what you're simply trying to do is that you want to go beyond numbers, like we saw under quantitative, counting percentages, counting numbers, but you are trying to examine your data deeper than numbers. You're trying to look at different dimension of your data. For example, in an interview, whether it's going to be online, face-to-face interview, you find out any facial expression of your participant, you're able to capture it, which which is going to miss out when you're collecting quantitative data. In quantitative data, you have already declared your variables, your skills, what they should focus on, which has two parts, whether it's going to be open or ended. And most times, now if you use close-ended question, you already declare, I want you to select from this option. This is the question, select from this option, don't go beyond this option, right? Now, in that case, you can't be able to read the participant's emotion, reaction, and so many other things that the person is feeling concerning the topic under discussion, right? But under your qualitative data, you're able to capture that. You have a question, and to that very question, it can multiply itself. Leading question. What do you know about, for example, what do you know about generative AI? The person gives an answer. And from that answer the person has given, you're able to get more question out of it based on how the person responded. Okay, I don't know about that. Okay, that is another question. Why? I know about that. How? But under your quantitative, those things are not going to be there. You're able to provide the question the person must be, will start and end. However, there is another part of this. It can be an open-ended question. In that case, the person is given a question, but you allow the person to express his or herself more. What is tell me about what is generative AI? You have listed you have listed your options. Okay, from this option, you can add more. The person can now add more based on from the options, away from the options you have provided. However, a qualitative research gives you a better insight into for you to understand what your respondents have to say and how they feel concerning your topic. Deeper information, deeper content to enrich your argument, to enrich whatever you are trying to understand. So it assists the researcher to uncover meanings, perspectives, experiences that may not easily be quantified through numbers, quantitative data. And that is where the qualitative research comes in, which is always used in a small scale. Instead of you using large number of people, few individuals can give you insight that you can generalize across other population. So we have also mixed method. Mixed method research combines the element of both quantitative, qualitative approach to provide a comprehensive understanding of your research problem. Very important. By integrating data collections and analysis techniques from both paradigm from both methods, researchers can triangulate the findings and get more holistic perspective and insight. Great. Now it works this way. You apply your quantitative method, let's say your questionnaire. At the same time, you are going to apply what? Your interview. What you're trying to do, okay? And sometimes you can even apply the same thing on the same participant. In this case, right now, you have your student versus student, or you can apply um, a quantitative on the same student. But after that, you can build more from from what you have found from their quantitative research. You're able to generate more questions and then go and do interview for more insight, or you do them concurrently, or you have the same institution, right? Let's say you're doing it about machine learning. Um, the perspective or the challenge of applying machine learning in higher education. Now, in this case, you have students which you want to use. And then let's say you have lecturers or other people in the administrative um, department. Now, the experience of students will be different from them, right? Now it's okay. No, you're going to collect your quantitative big number of data from the students. However, you want to also use the same in the same study, also get a qualitative insight from the administrators. So in this case right now, the administrators are lesser in numbers, right? When the students are higher in numbers. So you use your interview on the administrators, your questionnaire, your survey on the on the um, on the student. Now, what is simply going to give you is that you're going to have rich information. What the student could not cover, these other guys will also bring it on board. Or what they couldn't bring on board, the student will bring it on board, which at the end of the day makes your research to be much more rich in terms of the quality of data which you will collect. So, but now the choice is yours making those um, um in making those choices. So, okay, now we have a research strategy, which we have different kinds of research strategy. Now, you have collected that very data, right? How are you going to go about it, or how are you going to you have made the choice of your methodology. How are you going to be able to carry out that very research? So now we have our descriptive research on. So now I was able to divide it among quantitative and qualitative. Sometimes they can be overlapping. Let me put it that way. Where you can use any of these strategies. Sometimes you can also use it on both ends, depending. Remember what I said to you, what the researcher you are following. Some researchers will say that you can also use your survey on quantitative and qualitative. Some will say no. So that's why I say from the beginning, establish yourself who is guiding you. If you're using research onion, follow it to the end. If you're using the approach of Oates, Creswell, follow it to the end. And that is it. So now in a research strategy, first one descriptive, which involves what? To describe the character or the behavior of your population, right? It involves the a collection of data to provide a snapshot of the current state of affairs without manipulating variables. You are simply trying to understand the pattern of behavior, the characteristics, the attribute of your of a participant. You have correlation, which involves examining the relationship between two or more variables. You have a developmental approach, which focus on what? Studying changes over time within the same group, right? You have your observatory study, which involves what? You being on ground, monitoring, seeing how things have been done. You have your survey, which involves for collecting data from a sample of individual through questionnaire or interview, right? Like I made mention, which can be open or closed-ended what question to gather information about the attitude, opinion, behavior, characteristics of the characteristics of what of your population. Under your qualitative, you have your case study, which involves what in-depth exploration of single or group of events, phenomena. The researchers gather detailed information through various sources, right? Interview, observation, document, and all that to understand the case under discussion. Grounded theory, which is what a systematic methodology, right, for developing theory based on empirical data. The researchers collect and analyze data to identify patterns, right, and be able to categorize them and be able to put them into categories that emerge from the data, which at the end of the day, rather than starting with what? With a theory, you are able to do what? To generate your theory through your data, your hypothesis through your data. So you're not assuming that this is how it's gonna look like, but your data have informed you to know this is how the reality is. And the influencing variables. Ethnograph involves the study of people and culture. You have a content analysis, which is a systematic method to analyzing textual, visual, and all the rest of them, which enables the researchers to do what? To interpret the content of the document, the media, and other communication material to identify the pattern, the themes, and the meanings behind them. A phenomenology, which focus on what? Exploring and understanding lived experience of the people. So these are all different kinds of what? A research strategies that you can apply, whether on the quantitative or the qualitative. Okay. So you find out that the last one, which their lived experience, which enables you to identify how they perceive things, right? Through an interview, which enables you to interpret a subjective experience of your participant. Under your mixed method, we also have a sequential explanatory design. In this case right now, the researcher collect first and then analyze quantitative and then follow up by what? By the qualitative. In this case right now, you have collected the quantitative data, and then you go and collect a qualitative data, which enrich your understanding of that very topic in solving that very problem. With this design allows the researcher to explore and explain a quantitative finding through what? A qualitative insight. Now, the quantitative findings will be further be expanded through your what? Through your qualitative insight, which also makes the findings to be much more comprehensive, more detailed, more insight, and so on and so forth. Any question, guys?
No questions.
Only one person responding when others are there. Okay. Now, we also have a convergent parallel design. In this case right now, what we are trying to do is to collect both quantitative and quantitative at the same time. However, interpreting them individually and then be able to emerge their result and then be able to make your comparison. So how does this work? Is this you collect your quantitative, you collect your qualitative data, right? But you are not at the same time. You are doing this, you are doing that. But when you are doing analysis, you analyze them as a quantitative and a qualitative. However, in your in your result, you should be able to combine them to make comparison. Okay, what I found there, is it there? What is different between what I found from quantitative to what I found in qualitative? And that is it. So now you have your transformative design. In a transformative design, the researcher aims to use a mixed method to bring about social change or transformation in providing practical change into the into this system, and that is what differentiate both of them. Now, you want to make a change in the society through your research. What you simply do is to apply it by what? By providing through your research. If you are saying there is misuse of generative AI by students, right? What you simply do is to do what? Is to be able to do what? To collect your data. Through your data, you are able to provide how that misuse will do what? We mitigate it. You are not just understanding it, but you're trying to also provide a solution to that very problem. That's what a transformative design. Explorative design is all about um, involves an initial phase of qualitative data collection, and then analyze it, right? To explore the question by following what? Your your quantitative phase. So it's more or less the inverse of your sequential design. You collect your qualitative, you end up collecting your what? Your quantitative. Now, remember when I from the introduction, I made mention of three keywords: the what, the why, and the how. Now, this is very important, guys. Everything we'll be talking about here needed citation from the beginning of your writing of your research methodology. But it's very important for you to know this, that under your what, it deals with what the actual explanation of the concept of the concept. For example, you're talking about research philosophy. Now you define what is research philosophy. You're talking about now the what. You provide the sources, the source of your information through citation. It doesn't end there. Why are you talking about it? There is a general notion here that the what is already known. Bear that in mind. The what of your of that very concept. What is research philosophy is already known. Now, in this case right now, it's okay, fine. You have discussed it. You are giving there are number of research philosophy. You give each of them a brief discussion. Now, I will advise you guys, when you're writing your research methodology, try to let the reader to understand that your research methodology, sorry, try to let the reader understand that under each of component there are others. For example, research philosophy, you're able to tell the reader there are a number of them. This is positivism research. You give a little definition of it. You take this one, you take that one, you take that one. Now, when it comes to the one you're gonna choose, because among them all you're gonna choose one, that's where you go deeper. You provide the what, you explain it. You don't just explain. Remember the other ones, you just explain. You stop there. No deeper context. But under the one you're gonna choose, you have chosen for your study, you go deeper by providing the what, explanation, providing the illustration sources, the why. The why aspect is what you justify every. I've said now. You justify every research methodology component. Fine. This involves what? Providing a practical justification to prove the reason for your choice. You say there are six. You have given short brief explanation on each of them. You come to that sixth one, which is the one you're using. Now, among them, why do you choose this and not others? Very important. Now, you are able to give the reader a justifiable reason for choosing a particular component of the research methodology. How it's going to you justify the implication, the benefit to your study, and also be able to provide other researchers who have applied the same paradigm in their study that is similar to yours, that inform your decision. By so doing, you are justifying the why you are making that very choice. After you have able to provide the why through the benefit to your study and justifiable empirical proof that is fit that this component you have chosen is best for your study, because other people are using you bring in their inputs. The how provide a suitable or sufficient process or procedure on how the chosen component of the research methodology will be applied. For example, give a scenario on how the questions was or will be used. Now, many times I've seen that students, many times they will do the what without doing the why and how. Sometimes others will go as far as doing the why. Look at the benefit of this, but how are you going to use it? It's not there. But now, these three components should be able to be factored into your research methodology component, more especially on the one that you have chosen for the study. So that what? That it give the reader the reason to believe you that the study you want to conduct can be achievable or can be achieved at the end of the day. Remember, a proposal is not a stamp that the study can be done. You are proposing, you want to. And your research methodology gives you that very ground to show you how you want to do it. And under the why and the how is where you provide sufficient reason why you have made your choice and how you are going to apply your choice in your study. By the time you have done this, every reader of your document will be convinced that this study can achieve what it aims to achieve, at the end of the day. That is very important. So that's why I put it at the last, so that you can be able to understand that whatever we have talked about above should have their base of the what, the why, and the how. And that is very, very important in your study. Okay, also very important. Now, the aspect of citation and references, very important. There are two kinds, the citation. And what is citation? In our last class, I talked about these two. And every slide, I will be talking about the citation and the references, because oftentimes students, mix out that. Okay, so a proper in-text citation acknowledges the source of the information used in the study, right? Providing the credibility, right? So, meaning what? Everything you write under your research methodology provides citation. However, like I said last time, the voice of the researcher must be seen and heard in the process. You don't just keep quoting according to Maman, and then there you go, without adding your own voice. While you are doing your writing, quoting the people, also add your own. This you have what is called working definition and all that. And then the reference list is very important. If you're doing manner referencing list, it's okay, but using things like your EndNote helps you to get all your references right without missing out any of them from the in-text references. In conclusion, research methodology provides the pathway to carrying out your research. Very important. And also, the research process is built on theory, whether, um, as we have seen, philosophy. The philosophy shapes the research process. However, the what, the why, and how is very, very critical to consider in your study. Any question, guys? Guys, any question?
All good.
No
Okay.
questions.
Okay. Okay. If there are no questions, what I can say to you guys is all the best, and remember your assignment dates, and then keep them. Goodbye.